After he had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Now a centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who built us our synagogue." And Jesus went with them. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. But say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me, and I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well.
All through history, in every culture, human societies have longed for a better place. Some have sought it in the afterlife, the Greeks with their Elysian fields, the Norse with their Halvala, the native North Americans in the spirit world, Asians with their ancestors, Thomas More with his utopia. Others seek it in this world, so socialists have attempted to create it through the state. Here is Patricia Hewitt in 1997, "We will create the New Jerusalem." Capitalists through the market, humanists through the unchecked flowering of human personality. And then there's the idealist and the activist. Freddie Mercury, "This could be heaven." John Lennon, "Imagine all the people." Strictly speaking, the atheist, this desire for some better state of being is illogical and ought properly to be jumped upon. If we simply emerge by chance through a random collision of genes, there's no reason whatsoever that we should expect any kind of order or security or stability. Chaos rules. Get used to it. And yet we don't seem able to. I've taken numerous funerals, memorial services, Thanksgiving services here, my time as a Church of England clergyman. Time and again, even at the funerals of hardened atheists, there seems to be this inextinguishable, illogical longing that James or Fred or John is now playing on the great fairway in the sky. Remember the first ever memorial service I took here for a broker. No evidence of any faith in anything beyond. He'd headed out to Portugal, beautiful house by a golf course, found dead in his kitchen from a heart attack. And everybody was talking about the great fairway in the sky. For somebody who just didn't believe in such things. Shane Warne, Taylor Hawkins. Of course, if this better place is to be found, then death, disease, and evil and sickness, everything that wrecks this world will have to be eradicated. And over the next 10 to 12 weeks, as we consider just 2 chapters covering a small number of historical events and teachings of the Lord Jesus, I want us to see that this inextinguishable longing that is found in every age finds its fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ. Come to Jesus, and that for which people seem, almost when they don't even believe it, to long for, will be met. And today I just want us to examine one incident, put it in its context and think for a bit about it. And I want us to see that Jesus has shown it to be the case, that he is the one who can provide this glorious future. We can believe it to be the case that Jesus is the one, and you and I, amazingly, can benefit from it. Now, as Wes says, I've called the series Will the Real Jesus Please Stand Up? And with apologies to the original artist, my aim is that we examine closely the true Jesus of history and ask ourselves over these next 10 to 12 weeks, who is this man who, whether you like it or not, has impacted the world in which you live in every way imaginable? I thought of starting the talk, "May I have your attention, please?" which some of you who are familiar with Eminem will understand. Well, please open your copy of Luke's Gospel at page 25. And you'll notice in the paragraph entitled Messengers from John the Baptist that we find this figure, John the Baptist, coming to Jesus and asking this quick key question. You can see it there in verse 18 on page 25. The disciples of John reported all these things to John, and John, calling two of his disciples to him, sent them to the Lord, saying, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?" Now, the question that is being asked is repeated again just a couple of sentences later, verse 20. When the men had come to him, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to you, saying, 'Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?'" So that's clearly the question that's on the table. Is Jesus the one who is to come? Or shall we keep searching for some other figure who is going to deliver what we long for to us? And Jesus responds in verse 22, just further down that paragraph, by using words from one of the Old Testament prophets. Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you've seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news preached to them, and blessed is the one who is not offended by me." Now that's a direct quote from the Old Testament. It comes from Isaiah chapter 35, which is one of the most famous salvation poems in the whole of the Bible. And Isaiah 35 speaks of a day in the future when God's deliverer will lead God's people on what is described as the highway of salvation. Let me just read one sentence from Isaiah 35. "The ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away." So God speaks of a day where all sorrow will be removed, all sighing will be gone, and where in the language of Jesus, as he quotes it there on page 25, when the lame will walk, the lepers will be cleansed, the deaf will hear, the dead are raised up, and the poor will have good news preached to them. Note, this promise is not to deliver all of this here and now in this age. It is rather a promise of a new creation beyond this world, where death will be eradicated, disease, evil, sickness, and everything that we long for the removal of is gone forever. And Jesus' claim, when he's asked, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for it?" "Look at me," he says. "I am the one." He has shown it. We can believe it. You and I can benefit from it. Now, having established something of the background and the backdrop, let's drill into the opening words and sentences of the section that we're going to be looking at, chapters 7 through 8. Chapter 7, verse 1. After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearings of the people, he entered Capernaum. Now a centurion had a servant who was sick. He was at the point of death and was highly valued. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking Jesus to come and heal the servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "The centurion's worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who has built us our synagogue." and Jesus went with them. Now, we're not told precisely how the centurion came to hear of Jesus. Clearly, by now, Jesus was something of more than a local, a national, even an international celebrity. Just days earlier, he had been engaged in a massive teaching campaign. And great crowds, a great multitude of people had come to Jesus from all of Judea, from Jerusalem, from the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon. And those who had diseases had come to be healed, and all the crowd sought to touch him, for power came out from him, and he healed them all. So, Jesus was really quite a figure by this stage. You can imagine the scene. People had swarmed to him from all over the region, come up from Galilee to Galilee where he was operating. They'd come from Jerusalem, from Judea. It's as if Jesus had been teaching in Southend, and the whole of the southeast of England had flocked to hear him. London had emptied and Westminster had been deserted. And all this was going on in the region where this centurion lived. So though it doesn't look like the centurion had been present, clearly he'd been watching it on CNN and browsed the BBC website. His daughter had been following it on Facebook and so forth. And he'd heard that Jesus had healed absolutely everybody who was brought to him, such that there was a day in that part of Galilee when the hospital beds were empty, the accident emergency department was deserted, the GP's surgeries had nobody in the waiting queue, and the NHS budget was slashed to virtually nothing. But what we see in general going on in chapter 6, now in our incident, we see in particular. And Jesus has come with all God's authority to save us from disease. And the point is made by the way in which the healing takes place. If you look at verse 6, Jesus went with them. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. I don't presume to come to you, but say the word and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me, I say to one, go, and he goes, to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, turning to the crowd who followed him, said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." And when those who had been sent returned to their house, they found the servant well. So there was no consultation, no prescription, no medication, no outpatients clinic, no convalescence. In Matthew's account, we're given slightly more detailed medical notes. The servant is described as paralyzed and in great pain. Here we're told he's on the point of death. He's in advanced and terminal decline. And with just a word, from a distance, without even seeing him, Jesus speaks. And it's done. What are we to deduce from this? Well, Jesus tells us what we're to deduce from this. Are you the one to come, or should we look for another? Go and tell John what you've seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news preached to them. Blessed is the one who is not offended by me. Now, the point of these miracles is categorically not to suggest that Jesus will do this work of saving us from distress, disease, disorder, and death in this life now, today. It is rather to tell us that he is the one who is to come. One friend of mine has described it like this: the coming of Jesus into this world is like a lightning strike from outside. As if you have a kind of lightning bolt from God showing you a brief glimpse of the reality of the world for which we all seem to long. Even those who call themselves atheists, we find at their funerals this sense of longing. Says somebody, this is just typical of you Christians. It's kind of pie in the sky when you die, and it's all built on myth and make-believe. Well, let me push this a little bit further, if I may. Not only has he shown it, but you and I can believe it. We can believe. Let me give you just two reasons to ponder on for the rest of this week as we mull this over. First, we can believe it because of our author. These incidents are recorded by Luke. Luke was a medical doctor. He wrote 2 volumes, this account of Jesus' life, and then what's known as the Acts of the Apostles. The second volume, the Acts of the Apostles, is most likely completed by 63 to 64 AD. That means that what we have in our hands is the account written by Luke of Jesus' life and teaching, dating from about 59 to 61, something like that AD. Luke, the author, a medical doctor, did his work as an investigative historian. He tells us how he went about his business. Up front in the gospel, he tells us that just as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of things that have been accomplished, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us, it seemed good also to me. So Luke went about his business as a medical doctor, but he went about his business as, if you want, like an investigative historian interviewing the eyewitnesses. And when you read it, it reads like that. Place names, people's names, meteorological details, botanical details, incidental matters that one would never have imagined including unless one was actually there. Historical facts, political and sociological phenomena, things that can be cross-checked. And the incidents such as this one, and the one we're going to look at next week even more so, are quite simply too big, too significant for a medical doctor who is acting as an investigative historian to have included unless they actually took place. I mean, Luke was a doctor. He knew that people with terminal disease didn't just kind of get better just like that, or people who were dead didn't rise up off the mortician's slab. But now have a look at the incident itself. A centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death. Already you can see that the centurion is a decent man. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, "He's worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who built us our synagogue." There's no reason why a Roman centurion should pay particular attention to one of his staff like this. Servants were possessions, not friends. And there's certainly no reason why the member of an occupying army should do good to the people whom he is occupying and the nation which he is occupying. And we can see that, can't we, from what's going on in Eastern Europe. But he's not just decent and humane, he's also a reliable and a responsible individual. The centurion was in charge of 100 men. He ran the whole region. He worked alongside locally appointed officials. This is not Captain Manwaring of Dad's army. It's a 35-year-old major or lieutenant colonel in the British Army today, serving in some foreign nation and training their troops to conduct military warfare. Polybius, the 2nd century Roman historian, writes of Roman centurions, they must not be so much seekers after danger as men who can command, steady in action, reliable, not over-anxious to rush into the fight, ready to hold their ground and to die at their post. So what we have here is a competent man, a decent man, a reliable man, an honest man, a man of real responsibility. And as I look out on some of you in front of me today, could be any one of us. Or should I say any one of you? So he's decent, he's humane, he's reliable, he's responsible, he's humble, he's rational. Look at verses 6 and 7. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, don't trouble yourself. I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. Just say the word and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it." You see, this man knows how authority works. He runs the show. And in the Roman Empire, if you were a Roman centurion, when you said something, you spoke with all the authority of the Roman emperor. And this individual understood it. He had, if you like, the CEO's imprimatur. Do this, it's done. Drop that, it's dropped. He understands absolute authority when he sees it. And in Jesus, he sees absolute authority. I don't even need to have you come. You have all the authority of the divine. Just speak. He will be healed. So with all the logic of an intelligent, reliable, decent, humane, upright, rational man, he did the math, as they say. Just say the word. You see, we can come to incidents like this, can't we? And we kind of bury our head in the sand with regard to Jesus and say, well, I can just brush Jesus off and ignore him because this is all kind of myth and make-believe. The trouble is the individuals we're dealing with, they're not the kind of people who do myth and make-believe. They're people like you and me. Luke, a medical doctor. The centurion, a logical, rational, upstanding public figure. None of it's written as myth. It doesn't read like myth. It's presented as history. Jesus has shown it. We can believe it. It's an historical account with real, reliable, actual people. It's written really very close to the event. And the friends and the fellow staff of the centurion's household who'd been sent to Jesus, if they'd picked it up and read it and it hadn't happened, would be the first to say, this is just a load of mumbo-jumbo. Will the real Jesus please stand up? But finally, you and I can benefit from it. Now, this is an emphasis that I have failed to make in the past when I've spoken on this passage, and I've spoken on this passage quite a number of times, so it's a bit of a confession on my part of ineptitude. It has to be one of the key points, and to miss it is really very silly. This is a foreign soldier with no connection to the Jewish nation. And the fact that he's a foreign soldier with no connection to the Jewish nation is emphasized at the front end and the back end of the incident. It's emphasized by the elders of the Jews who come and make the point. He's a decent guy. He's actually been kind to us, though he didn't need to be kind to us. He helped build our synagogue. And then Jesus emphasizes it, doesn't he, in verse 9? When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, I'll tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith. Technically speaking, a rabbi like Jesus should have nothing to do with a man like this. And yet this man, this rank outsider, this person with no qualification, benefits from the rule of Jesus. Well, 3 simple concluding remarks. Jesus. Will the real Jesus please stand up? I think there's a tendency to think of Jesus as a kind of personal self-help guru for those who need an adult equivalent of a comfort blanket. Nothing could be further from the truth. Here is Jesus who comes, if you like, as a divine thunderbolt. That is a wrong way to describe it, obviously, because he's the person, Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, who breaks into this world. Go and tell John what you've seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, the poor have good news preached to them. Blessed is the one who is not offended by me. Are you the one to come? or should we expect another? Here is Jesus who steps in from outside into this world and shows himself to be the one who can provide that for which every single one of us longs. All through history, in every culture, human societies have longed for a better place. The Greeks with their Elysian fields, the North with their Halvala, the native North America in the spirit world, the socialist, the capitalist, even the atheist, illogically, seems to long for something, the idealist, the activist, some better place. If there is to be such a thing, such a reality, then we will have to have an eradication of all disease. Just think of the last 2 years. All sickness. And Jesus comes, if you like, if I might put it like this, as a thunderbolt to demonstrate that he is the one. Jesus. How big is your Jesus? If you think he's just a kind of spiritual comfort blanket for those who need a little bit of a leg up, well, you've completely missed it. Jesus. The world, no part of this world is unimpacted by disease and sickness and things that break in and interrupt and wreck our life. In preparation, I was pondering the square in which I live in South London, and I've lived there now for 24 years. And as I think around the houses as they've been occupied by various people over the years, the level of disease, of sickness, of brokenness, of sadness, mental illness, children born with desperate, debilitating conditions, MS, dementia, not to mention the pandemic. And here is Jesus. Are you the one to come? Ourselves. You and I can benefit from it. Surely this is what we're being shown in this opening incident of these 2 chapters that we're studying. Yet you can benefit from it. I can benefit from it. We can benefit from it. The centurion, right outside. Blessed is the one who is not offended. Well, next week we move from disease to death. We'll be thinking about the condition of life that ends for every single one in death. And we're going to see Jesus demonstrating that he has the solution to death. I hope you'll join us, and I hope you'll bring others. Will the real Jesus please stand up? Please, let's pray together now. We thank and praise you, our Father in heaven, that you haven't left us without hope in this world, that with all that spoils it. We thank you that in your kindness you sent your Son into this world and that he has the solution to all that wrecks the world around us. We thank you that even this centurion benefits. And we think of the city with such troubles, so much that weigh on people's shoulders, and we ask that in your mercy and kindness, you would cause many to come and hear about this Lord Jesus and his grace and mercy to us. We ask it in his name.